Thank you, Madam Senator. Enjoy voting. And once again, I apologize for the chaos that is the modern Congress. I'm going to start with Ms. Seifert. And I'm going to sort of leap into the end of my series of questions I had and sort of work backwards. How do we build a model, a technology, a policy, so the money never leaves the individual's account? If you actually, having gotten most of your testimonies last night and gone through them, it's often how do we go capture the bad guys, try to recover what we can. It's the constant problem of it's out the door and we chase. And we've had discussions, everything from family agreements for those who are older, saying with the financial institution that if it's over $5,000, another family member needs to be touched to issue that, to some sort of warning methodology. How do we stop so it's no longer sort of this pay and chase model, but it never leaves the account model? I'm blessed. I have a very well-educated district. I have a wealthier district, and the number of scams are just heartbreaking because these folks are the targets. Ms. Seifert.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, my own parents, I've had to tell them to put down the phone and ask who is talking to them. And this is like a core issue in my career now. So very much understand what a challenge it is and how important it is to speak with your family members about this. I would just highlight three things that I think are core to what our initiative at the Scam Center Strike Force thinks is part of this campaign. So one is the education, which is exactly what you're talking about. A lot of what we have seen is various agencies in the government with their own mandates, of course, doing education, but not doing it comprehensively and filling in the gaps. And that's part of what we're trying to do as part of the Scam Center Strike Force.
Forgive me, I know this is heresy. I've grown very skeptical on the effectiveness of education, considering how manipulative, almost evil, the use of some of the new technology has become. I'm almost wondering if there's, and this is going to be an open question for all of you, is there a policy set, whether from our financial institutions, our brokerage accounts, the Bitcoin machine down at the corner, whatever, that I have crazy stories of the owner of that business trying to stop grandma from stuffing money into it, and grandma lies to him because she's so convinced.
I think a lot of the challenges that with older Americans, they're coming to technology more recently, and they haven't grown up with a mindset. So while it might be harder in terms of educating them now, we also have to be educating the people who are younger because we don't want them to become victims later. The idea that every single person that you meet on the internet, you need to verify who that is, that it needs to be inculcated into the culture of the United States. We do not know who we are dealing with when we get a text message.
Okay,
we have to, that's a big part of education.
Okay. Ms. Goldberg.
If I might, I just,
okay, please
two
finish.
other things I'd like to highlight. So we do not think that the Scam Center Strike Force or the Department of Justice more writ large is gonna get our way out of this problem by whack-a-moling the different targets. A big part of this is getting private industry to take on this problem as well and to work with us and to have a laboring oar in the boat with us. And that means that we need, for instance, providers to send warnings, for instance, to their customers when they detect that their customers are engaging in activity. There are things that other jurisdictions are doing, like they have, Singapore, I think, is a leader here, where they have an app, for instance, that the government puts out that describes that people can check as to what are scam websites or scam wallets, things of that nature. There are more sort of cutting edge things that you can do when the providers are willing to work with the government and really put into the technology more safety mechanisms.
Well, okay, on that, Ren, how many of us have one of these that now when you get certain calls or certain texts, it pops up and says likely scam? Or, I mean...
That's a start. That's a start.
Well,
but the next step is to not even allow that phone call to come through, right? I think the likely scam still...
So, but that might require Congress and you may actually have to deal with, I mean, we actually set up a thing because I had a father, my father has been scammed multiple times. We actually went and put a thing where there's a $5,000, he can't do something over that without a family member.
Yep.
And it turns out the bank he uses actually did offer that service, just no one had ever asked.
And banks are doing a lot on the front lines here, but again, what you did with your family is something that not all families are talking about. Not all families with the older folks who are the targets of these scams have had that conversation already.
Okay.
And that's also a key part of public education. We just can't go for the older folks. We have to also get people around the Thanksgiving dinner table to be talking about this. We need the younger folks, the grandchildren and the children to also be saying, Grandma, who are you talking to on your phone?
All right, let's do a speed date. Mr. Goldberg, considering my skepticism on education, what technology is available that we could prevent the money from ever going out the door at the beginning?
I think this has to be looked at through two different vectors, the communication vector and the payment vector, right? So we have to work with private industry, and private industry needs to step up to identify the ways that victims are being contacted. Initially through phone calls, through texts, through emails, through social media, and they have to improve the ability of their own platforms to prevent the fraudsters from reaching the victims in the first place. We in law enforcement are always going to be reactive to a scam that's already in progress, but we can provide them intelligence on what we're seeing, and they have to use their own intelligence, which they are doing a lot better at doing now, but they need to continue to improve their systems to prevent victims from being reached in the first place. Secondly, the payment vector. Once a victim is contacted and is compromised and wants to send their funds, those payment systems have to be ready to deal with that and prevent that payment from going elsewhere, whether it's a crypto ATM, whether it's a traditional bank account where the money's being housed, whether it's a crypto firm, whether it's crypto analytics platforms. They all need to be in the mix to stop that payment from flowing forward. Law enforcement, again, is going to be reactive, but we have to be communicating back and forth as we are doing now to make sure that they are seeing what we are seeing. They are seeing how the money is flowing to the fraudsters and how victims are being contacted so that their systems can be updated, again, so that the victim never receives that communication in the first place.
Okay, Mr. Heeb.
Mr. Chairman, we've had a lot of luck with the Internet Crimes Complaint Center just executing the financial fraud kill chain. That, of course, is dependent on someone calling, whether it's the victim, him or herself, or a family member. But I think to your point earlier, Senator, we need to educate family members as well, the younger generation, because you're right about the education component for the elderly generation now. They don't necessarily retain the information. And the reality is, these scammers are so good at what they do. I mean, some of the most sophisticated people, as you pointed out, the educated folks in your district. I mean, we've had former FBI directors that have fallen victim to schemes like this. I mean, career law enforcement officers have fallen victim.
But in some ways, you're making my argument that I know we like our education models. I'm hunting for a technology model.
And I think that's where, at least now, what we're dealing with the kill chain and the relationship with the financial institutions where they can stop the payment. Again, it is pay and chase at this point, and definitely take it back to give some consideration to technology to stop it.
Okay, Ms. Grisman.
First of all, I'd love the opportunity to disabuse you of your skepticism of the benefits of consumer ed. It really does work.
But it does work, but we spend how much time on it and how much fraud still takes place?
It needs compliments. There's no question.
So we need to just do more of the same thing.
We need to do more things more innovatively. So the example you gave with the phone is a great one. Years ago, the FTC held a series of challenges under the America Competes Act precisely to spur industry to develop technological solutions, call blocking solutions, so that maybe the call will get through, but it'll say spam alert, or it'll say give some sort of warning. We recently held a similar challenge to industry to develop technologies that would identify whether something is a voice-cloned telephone call.
You see, those are technology solutions. How do I make, as the kill chain word, which it's an interesting one, how do we help that, saying it never contacts my phone? We give permission and it never hits us.
That's a different approach to using to how you use the technology. The technology probably is there to totally block a call. There are other factors that are taken into account. I mean, there are working groups, for example, the FTC under the Stop Senior Scams Act formed a series of committees, one of which was to look at technological solutions that would minimize the impact of fraud targeting older adults. There are various working groups trying to create better information sharing among industry sectors.
Could you help me, if you can just either give me the link, because I want to read whatever they've written. Look, this is a plague on our society. You guys are doing amazing work. We need to get this down to zero. That always has to be the goal.
Happy to share with you what we've
Okay,
done.
that report would help. Ms. Price.
The Commission has made several suggestions along these lines, several of which were alluded to already. But one is requiring telecommunication carriers and social media platforms to implement stronger verification and detection measures. So, for example, existing anti-spoofing frameworks, there's one called the Stir-Shaken framework, which requires carriers to identify and verify caller ID information and that it's from a legitimate caller. But we don't know that it works for foreign phone calls and things coming from overseas. So that's one place where we could start. Another that hasn't been mentioned yet is greater cooperation with the financial intermediaries to detect and stop scams, especially in cryptocurrency when things start to move between individuals and their scammers. So there are several places where we've made suggestions in addition to what's already been mentioned.
Okay. All right, David.